All right, homies, what is cracking up in your place? Max is back with his brand new invention, and we're going to get downtown to Funky Town. Before I do, I just wanted to say that if you are here for the content, which of course you are, then you should enjoy. And if you're here for graphics and funny animals like Muppets, puppies, and robots, then you could go check out Matthew Berry because I spend my time doing the research and not making cool shows. But hey, maybe someday we'll turn it into a cool show. Till then, welcome to Mex Fire Fantasy Report, where I'm always bringing you something different. Of course, I've got your classic buy, sell, hold, drop. I've also got your gray area rankings, baby, which I'm going to give you a sneak peek right now, which I think that's pretty cool. And I've also got your top ads right now that the waivers are over. I've got a segment called Facts, which should be pretty fun for me to do. And a segment called Interesting. And we'll see how that goes. And then to the end, I'm going to go over all these gray area rankings for your dome. So give me a like down below if you're a G. And so let's get started here with the sell highs and all this good stuff. The first sell high is Theilin. And he got 2 touchdowns. Yay. So now you can sell him because he only got 5 targets. And all everyone's going to see he's got the 2 touchdowns. And they're going to be like, well, it is Theilin, so he's safe. So for me, people are going to think he's a nice buy. He's getting a nice target share. But they just don't throw that much. And so there's a lack of volume there. And look at Diggs. Diggs got 3 targets. 3 targets, not 3 catches. Okay, he got 15 yards, no touchdowns, and that was in a game where they scored 34 points. So right now, if I was you, I'd be like looking for who just lost Davante Adams or who needs a wide receiver and then going and selling high on those guys while I can. Now, they could have good seasons, but I'm thinking as an investor, and I'm going to sell high right now. I can always buy back in on other wide receivers as long as I'm winning these trades. And so that's pretty much it for my sell highs while I'm here hitting the sell high. Do not sell Saquon Barkley unless you can get a nice little ransom for him because his playoffs is amazing. So we obviously want to win. And I know if you lost Saquon, you might be nervous you're going to not make the playoffs, but you got to believe you're going to make the playoffs because once you're there, the key is to win it. Nobody really cares about finishing in the playoffs as much. It's nice to be in the playoffs, but if you're not winning the whole thing, what's really the point? So save Saquon Barkley unless you can get a nice return for him. You never know. He might only miss 2 or 3 weeks. We don't really know for sure. So don't sell. All right. And some of my replacement guys would be obviously Wayne Gallman because he'd be there until Saquon comes back. And, Danny Dimes Jones might help him out, but he is a 3-down running back. And he can catch. So, you could do worse. And then, as a matter of fact, my next running back that I would be looking for maybe would be Ronald Jones. And this is what you're going to have to deal with right now unless you can make a trade. One other guy just for this week could be TJ Yeldon. If Singletary misses time, and they could definitely be down. And they're going to be facing, I think they're facing the Patriots. So they're going to be down and they're going to need to come back. Or maybe that's Falcons, I can't remember. But they're facing a good offense. They're definitely going to have a chance at being down. And they're not going to use Frank Gore in the passing attack a whole lot. So TJ Yeldon can be a little sneaky for you if you're real desperate. I might suggest you trying to make a trade. And some off the top of my head for Barkley would be Fournette, Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, David Johnson, Josh Jacobs. Those would be some guys that I would be interested in trading for because, you got to keep in mind that, you only need them to fill your need now. You just don't want to fall too far behind. So I'm just saying some good guys. I wouldn't trade Barkley for those guys. I'm saying some of those guys you should trade for and then put Barkley on your bench. So speaking of that, let's go to these buy lows here. So buy low would be not buying your high. So I'm not saying buy high. If someone wants a lot for these guys, you're not going to give it to them. So you're going to buy low. Leonard Fournette has not really been balling. He hasn't looked great, but they keep giving him the ball. And he even got 8 targets Homie, 6 catches and 8 targets for a running back who's already getting 20-plus touches. It's just a matter of time, and that's his floor. He's at his floor right now. He can't do much worse other than get hurt. So you want to buy when people are at their floor. Right now, Fournette is there, so he's a great person to be buying. Yes, I said it. I'm saying buy Fournette. No, I don't think he's that great of a running back, but I think the opportunity is at a good buy section right now, and so there you go. The next guy I wanted to jump to would be Aaron Jones, because we saw what happened when he got all the work. He didn't even do a good job, but he still put up about 17 plus PPR points. And as long as, what's his name, Jamal Williams, his backup is hurt, and he might be concussed, and that's a position you're going to want to try to buy low on. It doesn't mean, he's your number one target of this bunch, because your number one target to me would be Le'Veon Bell. But if you can get a deal on Aaron Jones, it's always about getting a deal. Buy low, okay? And these are guys that are beneath market value right now. So Le'Veon Bell is a clear-cut stud, and he looks great. That offense is going to feature him. He gets plenty of targets. He gets the touches on the run game. He's a real workhorse. And so he's my top target on here. And then let's jump back up here to Kittle. Let's see here. Well, Kittle dropped a touchdown. Otherwise, he had been having a much better game. But he's still leading his team in target share, and he's still another opportunity to buy low on Kittle. So another week in a row, he makes it here. And then Marlon Mack, same thing. He put up another consistent day. And consistency, guys, is an asset. Don't worry about the overall points as much as the consistency. The boom and bust, as I keep trying to say, are the guys you try to avoid. You want to sell on the boom or bust guys when they're booming and avoid them when they're not, because you can't do anything with them when they're not. And obviously, you don't want them in your lineup. You want the consistent guys you can count on, like Marlon Mack. He's going to be leaned on, and he's a good target. And then Miles Sanders, he looked amazing. Some people aren't as happy as what he did last week, but he got over 7 yards a carry in the NFL. This isn't college. He averaged over 7 yards a carry, and he scored 14 points in PPR. That was with somebody else taking 3 touchdowns away from him. So if his floor is 14 points, and his upside is add 3 touchdowns to 14 points, you're talking about an explosive producer on a team that is going to be having a high-powered offense, and they have a really good offensive line, and so he's going to be involved in the passing game. He can't get game scripted out because he's good. He's a good receiving back, and he's better than Jordan Howard. So every single week his touches are increasing. And pretty soon, if he had scored those 3 touchdowns, he'd be untouchable right now. There's no way anybody would trade him if he just blew up for 40 points, But he didn't get those 3 touchdowns. Jordan Howard is there, and that is an issue, but that's why he's available. His floor has got to be what we saw, right around there, because he's not going to lose too much work to Jordan Howard. You can't when you're producing 7 yards a carry. So I like Miles Sanders. Still a time to buy low. Window is still open on Miles Sanders to buy low. And the window is still open on Montgomery too, because Montgomery has been impressing everybody since the day he got there. And all of his touches have increased too, except for last week. While they didn't exactly increase, they decreased for his competition, which is Mike Davis, who only got 1 touch. So he has earned that right. And if you listen carefully to what Nagy is saying about Montgomery, is that when they asked him why that the split was what it was with him and Davis, was because of what Montgomery is showing them right now. Okay, so you can expect him to be integral to this offense because he's the real deal, and the coaches noticed that. I mean, they traded up to get the guy, and now he's not let them down. He's impressed them even more. And just like Miles Sanders, these rookies come in. It takes them a couple of weeks to earn their trust and earn it. They're not just going to hand over the keys to a new guy unless they desperately need them. They're going to make them earn it. That way everybody respects them, and that creates value for their job. So that's how coaching works. So these guys are getting more and more, and that's what you want to see. Okay, so Montgomery is also a nice little buy low for you. And then Josh Jacobs, now he only got 1 catch in his last game, and not being involved in the passing game is definitely problematic. And being on a low-scoring offense is problematic. And if he only got 10 rushes and you get phased out of games when the negative game script happens, then of course that's problematic. But I think that they're going to be featuring him more in the pass game because that's what Gruden said he was going to do. And he's a supremely talented athlete that they spent a top pick on that you can get cheap right now because he's not had a couple good weeks. Bell cow running backs are hard to find, and if Gruden holds true to get him more involved in the passing game, you're going to have a stud on your hands. All right, now John Ross. This is pretty funny because last week I was telling you to sell him, and that was because he had 2 good weeks in a row, and he had value, and if he crashes, his value would be next to nothing now, which is exactly what happened. And so now he's a buy for me because to me it looks like they have a passing offense. They're trying to throw the ball a lot. That's why Boyd and Ross get a lot of targets or a lot of possibilities for touchdowns. And right now you can get him on the cheap. Okay, they got a bad defense, so they're going to have to put up points. And here's the thing, I don't think AJ Green is really coming back. You know, he might, but I'm just saying if he does, it's going to be problematic. He's got 2 bad feet, and he's older. And even if he does, I still think there's still room for Boyd and Ross. But right now, because he just only got 2 catches or 22 yards, you know, he kind of fell down in value a little bit. But right now, I'd be buying him because I think that offense is going to need him. And you're just going to have to deal with he could be your wide receiver 3 or your wide receiver 4, you know, or wide receiver 5, even though I don't really recommend carrying 5 wide receivers if you can avoid it. You want to save your bench spots for running backs. And, all right, so moving on to drops. All right, let's go to hold real quick. Okay, Cooper Kupp. So the potential is huge, and, you know, here's the thing with Gurley. It's got his new issues since last season, and I think that the Rams have converted their offense a little bit to feature more of Cooper Kupp or certain matchups in the passing game, especially the wide receiver versus cornerback and linebacker matchups. And so I think they have a new scheme and a new version that they feature when Gurley's not in. And, you know, Kupp is potentially going to continue this. He won't probably get 3 touchdowns every game, but it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up with the wide receiver top 5 or top 10 as a wide receiver at the end of the year, even from this point on. So for him, we're not selling him. You know, we're not really buying him either because when you come off a 3 touchdown game, the price is going to be too expensive and no one's going to want to sell. So can't buy someone. But if you have Kupp, we're not selling. And O.J. Howard, we're going to keep O.J. Howard too because that offense is going to put up points. They're going to need to put up points, and he's too good to ignore. He got 66 yards or 67 yards last week, and that's not bad for a tight end. You know, tight end landscape is hard to come by, and he has touchdown upside. So if you have him and you drafted him, then you kind of got to hold him because he's not worth a whole lot. You can't just drop him unless you have Darren Waller or someone like that, you know, unless you picked up some Greg Olsen or something, and even then you might want to hold on because Greg Olsen is kind of old and he could get hurt. So there's your 2 holds. Well, my drops are going to be James Washington. You know, he had a lot of potential upside, but now that upside's kind of gone because we saw what happened with Dionte Johnson, got promoted over him. And so when he gets only 4 targets, he's the kind of guy who can boom and put up a huge touchdown anytime. He's supremely gifted, but right now he lost the wide receiver 2 job, and that role is Dionte Johnson. So he's in the ad section of this video in the future. Fast forward to there, and you'll see that. But moving on, Darwin Thompson is behind Damian Williams, LaShawn McCoy, and Darrell Williams, and so that's just too many people behind for me to roster. And then Duke Johnson. You know, how things have changed. Just about a month ago, he was a running back 1 for the Houston Texans, and so that's why I advocate we trade out of positions that we're in when they're high. All right, boom. So let's move on to this section. This should be fun, called facts. All right, now I told you Eckler. I told you to sell him. Okay, now obviously Melvin Gordon has come back. Facts. All right, I told you to sell Emmanuel Sanders because his value was going to drop after he had a bad game. Facts. Told you to buy Mike Evans. Now he just exploded. Facts. Told you to sell David Johnson. Now his last game, he only had 11 carries and has lost some of his value. Facts. Now, George Kittle is still a target. I was telling you to target him last week, and he's still target. He's still a target for me. I'm trying to get him if I can based on his low value, which is compared to his real value, and because he dropped a touchdown. So that guy is the guy you should still target. And then also I recommended to buy Christian Kirk and Larry Fitz. Facts. And then I told you to buy my boy Miles Sanders, and he just got 126 yards, okay? And his touch is going up every single week. He's involved in the passing game. He's not game script dependent. So those are facts, homie. I told you to buy Marlon Mack. Now he had 18 touches, including 2 catches for 88 yards and a touchdown. Facts. And then how about John Ross coming off a 22-yard game? I told you to sell him. And now I'm telling you, pick him back up. And last week when he had a bad week, the Bills, the cornerbacks are very good. So now you can buy him cheap and hold on until he comes back up. All right, now Tyler Boyd, he had 6 catches on 11 targets. So he's back up. And that's how it's going to be. They're probably going to trade off a lot, and there will be some games where they both go off. And then also I was telling you to try to trade for Joe Mixon, and now he's healthy. And he had a good week last week and is getting ready to do even better. And then, of course, Darren Waller, homie, 14 targets. I told you, now you're set at tight end. And then what else? Greg Olsen. You know, didn't I tell you Greg Olsen was back after week 2? Yeah, he's back, homie. And then, hey, check this out. DJ Chark, he's moving up. That's facts. Terry McLaurin, a beast. Facts. He's getting deep passes. Plus, he must look at the red zone. And third down guy, every time you get in a 3rd and 4, 3rd and 10, they're looking for McLaurin. So he's a beast. That's facts. Marquise Brown is facts. Gardner Minshew is legit. Facts. All right, so that's that section. I don't know. It's a little cheesy, but I just want to give it a try. And now let's move this train to the top pickups. Running back, we've got Wayne Gallman. Now he's all right. He's not going to win your league for you. He can save you if you were desperate for a running back. Now, Alexander Maddison, he can win your league for you, so he needs to be rostered. These are in order of who I would pick up myself. Ronald Jones is worth a pickup because he's already getting some work, and there's a chance he ends up with all of the work. He actually looked good last week. And also, Tony Pollard is worth a slot on your bench because if something happens to Zeke, he's going to get force-fed the ball. He's going to be on a good offense. He's going to put up a ton of points. And Gus Edwards is the guy. He's already taking work from Mark Ingram as it stands. And if something happens to Ingram, he's going to get Ingram's portion of his work plus retain his own portion. So he'll be even more valuable than Ingram is right now. And Gio Bernard, we know when someone gets an injury, the chances of re-injury are increased. So Joe Mixon is a higher increase of injury as of right now. And Gio Bernard is the kind of running back that would get all the downs. And out of all the handcuffs out there, Gio Bernard checks all the boxes. So he's definitely a top guy that you know when the injury occurs, if it does occur, that he is the guy, which most handcuffs you don't know that they're the guy. And so that's one reason why we love Alexander Maddison so much. We just know he's the guy. And so those are your top pickups right there for running back. And then wide receiver. You know what? Yeah, let's do wide receiver. You got DJ Chark. He's an ex-wide receiver. You know, he's the top guy. He's the number 1 wide receiver for a team that is actually having to throw the ball because Leonard Fournette is not breaking the runs. And teams are geared up to stop their run, which forces them to end up throwing. So DJ Chark is an ex-alpha wide receiver. All right. And then there's Phillip Dorsett, and in his 2 games, he has 3 touchdowns. We know Edelman is injured. We know Gordon is always a risk to be even out of the NFL at any time he slips up. And he's got Tom Brady there. So Tom Brady obviously trusts him. Like I said, 2 games with 3 touchdowns already. So he's the kind of guy that can get you some points in its pinch, or if something happens to someone ahead of him, he can become a real good starter for you. And then Dionte Johnson, I'm putting him on my bench right now, and I'm going to see what happens this week. Remember when I was telling you that you got to jump on things before they happen twice, and definitely before they happen 3 times. So Dionte Johnson had a really good week. I saw the game. He also was held on a whole other touchdown that he would have scored, so he could have easily had 2 long touchdowns, and then they went right back to him, and he did get a touchdown. And so I think that he might be the answer there. The guy who Juju was last year that guy could be Dionte Johnson this year, but we don't know it yet. We got to see it another game. But if you see it another game, you won't be able to add him because he'll be too high on the waiver priority. You got to get him this week and put him on your bench and see what happens. If nothing happens, obviously you just cut him. We can just chalk that up to the Pittsburgh Steelers being a different offense. But if this guy does produce, there's a reason why they put him there over James Washington. So, and then of course we got Paris Campbell too. Yeldon's most likely not going to make it this week, and Paris is going to get all of the work. So he would be a good spot up starter for as long as T.Y. Hilton is out and get a chance to gain some rapport with Jacoby Brissett. And so let's get into the quarterbacks. Daniel Jones, he's going to be playing Washington. Now, if you watch any sports anywhere, you know that he's a superstar running back, right? No, I'm just kidding. But he had 2 running touchdowns, and he could be a star. And so if he beats someone to the edge for a touchdown, and then he didn't even get hit, so he is pretty fast. And he could be a star. So that's why he's the top guy on here. And he looks polished. One of the reasons because he played a lot in college. He has a lot of reps under his belt. So he's a pretty solid quarterback coming out of the gate compared to some other rookies who didn't get that much work in college. Andy Dalton is playing against Pittsburgh, and he's probably going to be down points because the Bengals defense is not good. And so, he's got some really good wide receivers, and there you go. Nice formula ingredients there to create some fantasy points. And then also Stafford has got some nice wide receivers, and he's playing against Kansas City Chiefs, so chances are high he's going to need to put up points, and he's got the wide receivers to do it, so he's also got the recipe for a good fantasy week. And Jacoby Brissett, his is not as bright, but his season-long value is much brighter because Hilton's going to come back, and Brissett's a lot better than people know. And so if you've been paying attention, he's been putting up decent numbers, and he's got a nice schedule coming up, and I think he's a sneaky good play. And then of course the Gardner Minshew, he's playing like Tom Brady, he's literally playing in Tom Brady's category when it comes to stats. If you took his name off and you didn't know who he was. So he's a guy to keep your eye on, maybe even roster, especially in Dynasty. And then Kyle Allen, he's played amazing, so he's hitting up Greg Olsen all the time and for touchdowns, and he's looking good. Maybe it'll all his chariot will turn into a pumpkin this Sunday, but right now these guys look good. And then Case Keenum, he's not really that exciting to me, but he is playing against the Giants, so if you're in a pinch, maybe you go there. And then Mason Rudolph is playing against the Bengals, who we were just talking about. And Mason Rudolph has got a lot better still in the future to show us. And I think he's just getting his feet wet last week. And so I think there's a lot to come from Mason Rudolph. There's got to be a reason why they traded away their top pick for Minka Fitzpatrick, and they're not going to be looking, they're already sold. And the draft grade on Mason Rudolph was very high. So anyways, this week he's playing Cincinnati, so he might have a chance to show something, what he can do. And, all right, tight ends. You got Will Dissly's pretty much the only guy on the radar. And then if you have a problem at tight end, you should probably stash Goedert on the bench because that could save your day at some point in the future. Now, if you're already stacked at tight end, you've already got yourself your Kittle, or you got yourself your Kelsey or your Waller, then you don't really need to go pick up Goedert. That's just a waste of a bench spot. You're loaded, you're set at tight end. But if you're short, you have a bad tight end that you don't like, and you might want to go grab Goedert and just see what happens with Ertz. And Ertz isn't indestructible. And then next week, Jimmy Graham will be on this list. So even though they just played last night, that's why I'm not putting him on here now, but he got 9 targets. Devontae Adams is still going to be out probably for a couple of weeks at least, so they're going to need that target guy. They're going to need that third guy, and I definitely see him being good, especially as long as Devontae Adams is out. So, all right, that's the whole thing, and make sure you subscribe like a boss. You know what I'm saying? We're going to keep this thing moving up to interesting. The first thing on interesting is going to be Daniel Jones is a star. And the Giants wanted to throw even when Barkley was in the game. So even when they had Saquon Barkley in the game, they were throwing like crazy. They were throwing the ball all over the place. That's important to realize. because the offense is a throwing offense. And he's fast. Obviously, he ran 2 touchdowns in, so you got rushing touchdowns already with this guy. And he's accurate, which is something rare for someone who's good at running. Most of the people who are running quarterbacks lack accuracy. So he's got lots of wide receivers that he can throw to with Tate and Sterling Shepard and Evan Ingram's, who's basically a wide receiver. And, when Saquon comes back, he'll have Saquon Barkley for the dump-offs. So, Daniel Jones, especially for stats, he definitely could be something. We don't know. Got to see it again and see how it looks, but I'm just saying it's interesting. And then the Bucs offense is coming to life. We saw what happened with Mike Evans. This is what happens is a lot of times when a new coach takes over, it gets worse before it gets better, and then they turn it around after a couple of weeks. And so right now the Bucs offense is legitimate for fantasy. They are throwing the ball all over the place, and their running backs aren't good anyway, so they're going to have to throw. And once you got a wide receiver like Mike Evans, you got to find a way to get him the ball. And so his buying window is obviously closed. Okay, he's now a keeper. And also Jameis Winston is a keeper because he's going to run this offense. And the only question is really about the running back and also a little bit about O.J. Howard. Are they going to use him to block a lot, or are they going to take advantage of the fact that he's a huge mismatch, which it's probably going to be a little bit of both. So he's not as bad as he looks, but he's nowhere near what you thought he was going to be. And so that's pretty much the thing for him. So that's pretty interesting. And then Jeff Wilson, what I think is interesting is that they gave him the ball twice, and they used him like 3 times in the red zone, and one of them was a fake run. So the first one that I noticed, it wasn't even a 1-yarder. He was 4 yards away. And so from the end zone, they brought him in, and it showed me that they're committed to running the ball in the red zone. Okay, because it was 4 yards away, and they didn't have to run it. And so it also shows me that this guy has the role of that job. So who the guy they want when it comes down to the inside the 5 is Jeff Wilson Jr. And, he was in on a whole other red zone play. And like I said, they used a trick. So they used a wide receiver to run, and then the wide receiver fumbled it. So they'll probably feel better about giving it to Jeff Wilson, who already got 2 touchdowns. And Jimmy G looked actually really good. The receivers kind of let him down a little bit, but they're not on the verge of exploding, but they just this shy of so many big plays. And I think the 49ers are sneaky good right now. And so anyway, I just think that's interesting. And then, by the way, who else didn't make it on this list is Greg Olsen, because I already talked about him, but he's not only back, we know now he's QB proof. Because now he's switched from Cam Newton to Kyle Allen, and he still got his heavy targets and got his touchdowns, and so we know he's QB proof, which is good to know. And we know Jimmy Graham is back because Devontae Adams is hurt and Jamal Williams is out, and still got Aaron Rodgers, so Jimmy Graham is in. They didn't make the list either, but I just thought that was interesting. And that's it, my homies. That's it for interesting. Tell me what you thought about it. Let me know if there's anything you think that's interesting too that I didn't mention. And these are my gray area rankings. I just thought this was more fun than putting up regular rankings. These are the things that are a gray area, and some of them are more simple and obvious, and some of them are a little bit deeper, and you don't know if they should even be on here. But that's what I mean by gray area. So just let you check it out for a minute, man. I mean, most of these I already talked about, like DJ Chark, Demarcus Robinson. Andy Reid said he's a star, so that's all I need to know. That probably means he's the 3rd wide receiver on the team, and Mecole Hardman could be the 3rd wide receiver on the team, but he is a rookie, and so chances are he's behind Demarcus Robinson. But either one of them, you want them. Either one of them could win the league this year, keeping in mind Tyreek Hill's still hurt, and there's no guarantee he's going to even come back or that he won't re-injure. And then you've got Sammy Watkins, who hasn't had a very healthy injury history, and you can potentially easily have the top wide receiver in the NFL on your hands if something happens to Sammy Watkins and Tyreek Hill, which is a long shot, but it's not that long of a shot. Both those guys, one of them's injured now, and the other one is usually injured. So I like both those guys, kind of sneaky upside. The upside's just too big to ignore, in my opinion. And then Alexander Maddison is the best handcuff in the game right now. If something happens to Dalvin Cook, they're just going to keep on rolling the same way, using Maddison the same way they're using Cook now. He's the perfect plug-and-play guy. So, You have to find a way to get him on your team if he's on the waivers right now. I mean, if he's available, you need to drop somebody to put him on. I don't even know who you need to drop, but figure out somebody and get that guy on your team. I'm not saying you should trade a lot away to get him because you already missed out if you don't have him. You know what I mean? So you can't trade for handcuffs. That just doesn't really work. But if he's available, you got to get him. Darrell Williams is going to have sneaky upside this week and next week. And anytime something happens to Damian Williams and LaShawn McCoy, he's going to be the guy. So he's kind of a handcuff with current value right now that can win some weeks for you. I'm not saying he's going to win the league, but he can win a week for you. And if he's getting the starting touches of the Kansas City Chiefs, he can win anyone's week the week he has that job. He just won't have it the whole year. And then under him, I have ranked Wayne Gallman because he's not going to win anybody's league, but he can save your butt if you got Saquon Barkley and you got an injury and you need a running back. He can put up some numbers for you, but not big numbers, but he won't, he'll get some. And then we got Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Geronimo Allison. Basically, I call them even. You never know which one's going to go off, which is one reason why I don't like them a whole lot. But you can't ignore the value that they're going to have, especially after Devontae Adams got hurt, and those targets have to go somewhere. So they're both equally ranked, in my opinion. And then Dionte Johnson, he's the second wide receiver, starting wide receiver for the Steelers. They were trying to get something going. I think he's worth a shot because he had a good week last week. You just park him on your bench, see what happens. If he has another good week, now you've got something because everyone will start talking about him for you, and he'll already be on your bench. And then Ronald Jones, talked about him already. He's got the potential to take the job. And then Phillip Dorsett, talked about him. Pollard, Bernard, Gus Edwards. There you go, homies. Let's see, one I didn't really talk about. Vernon Davis is sneaky. If he got a couple touchdowns, I wouldn't be that surprised. They got to throw it to someone. It can't be McLaurin every play. They're going to have to, look around, and the only other guy they're really probably going to see is Vernon Davis, especially Jordan Reed is gone. So I think he could be the type of guy who has a big week or two and starts to become the hot guy that everyone should have picked up. I just think there's a chance that happens. Because that offense is going to still need to score points, and he is very good. And then Paris Campbell, T.Y. Hilton's probably going to be out, so he'll do good. Stafford, Minshew, talked about him. All right, so that's pretty much it, homies. You know what I'm saying? Hit that subscribe if you liked it. And we're too blessed to be stressed over here. Tell me what I missed down below, like, if you're boss, go ahead and hit like. If you're subscribed, you're going to get the most important information right to you. So if you're not, make sure you are, because the most important thing in fantasy is knowing things that people don't know. So peace to my niece, and I'll see you on the other flip skeezy.